Predicting chemical reaction. There are driving forces for a reaction to occur. One is neutralization. When do we know if there is neutralization? This is when a reactant is an acid and the other is a base. So this is a sample multiple choice question. You are asked which of the given reactions represent an acid-base reaction. So you look for an acid and a base, and there will surely be a reaction because of neutralization where you form salt and water. Another driving force is formation of insoluble product or precipitate. For this type of reaction, you need to be familiar with the solubility rule. So this is the solubility table where you have the compounds containing nitrate, acetate, chlorides are soluble, and down below are insoluble. And of course, there are exceptions. So in this multiple choice question, you are asked which reaction will result in a precipitate. So you have to examine the products of the reaction. Which of this is insoluble? If something is insoluble, then you will produce a precipitate. For instance, take for instance, letter A. Is potassium phosphate soluble or insoluble? Tingnan natin ang phosphate. Dito, it says insoluble ang phosphate, but there is an exception, compounds of ammonium and the alkali metal cation. So potassium phosphate here is soluble. How about aluminum bromide? Nasaan ang bromide? Dito. It is classified among the soluble ionic compounds. Merong exception, compounds of silver or bromides of silver, mercurous, and lead. Napasok ba to sa exception? Hindi. So, pareho silang soluble. Okay, so take, for instance, letter C, sodium carbonate and calcium chloride, where you form calcium carbonate and sodium chloride. Let's take first sodium chloride. Chloride is among the soluble ionic compounds. The exceptions are compounds of silver, mercurous, and lead, pero sodium chloride. So, hindi siya napasok sa exception, kaya soluble ang chloride. What about carbonate? Okay, dito sa baba, among the insoluble, so insoluble ionic compounds, compounds containing carbonate. Merong exception if it is a compound of ammonium and the alkali metal. Pero calcium, nabilong ba siya sa exception? Hindi. So, calcium carbonate is a precipitate. So, in the reaction between sodium carbonate and calcium chloride, you will produce a precipitate, calcium carbonate. Next, driving force is when there is redox or formation of gas. Okay, usually, kapag redox, it involves a metal and an acid, or a metal and salt. Okay. You have to be familiar with the reactivity series of metals. Ito. The one at the top are more active. So, what do we mean by that? Potassium is more active than sodium. Sodium is more active than calcium. Yung more active metals can displace the one below. Okay? More active metals dito sa ibabaw can displace hydrogen. Below hydrogen, itong copper, these are the metals that cannot displace hydrogen. Ibig sabihin, if I put together copper instead of magnesium, copper and HCl, this reaction will not occur because copper cannot displace hydrogen. So you don't produce any formation of hydrogen gas if your metal is copper. But if it is magnesium, magnesium is above hydrogen, so it can displace hydrogen, and hydrogen gas will be evolved. So this is gas formation, and at the same time, this is redox because there is a change in oxidation number. Initially, hydrogen has an oxidation number of +1. After the reaction, magiging 0. Before the reaction, magnesium, ang kanyang oxidation number is 0. After the reaction, magiging +2. So this is a redox. Okay, redox is also a driving force of reaction. Okay, so tingnan natin yung reaction na nasa inyong sample virtual between sodium hydroxide and nickel nitrate. If there is a reaction, okay, nickel will react with hydroxide, sodium with nitrate. Tingnan natin, meron ba sa product na insoluble? Tingnan natin muna ang nitrate. Okay, compounds containing nitrate are soluble. Meron bang exception? Wala. So all nitrates are soluble. What about hydroxide? Andito ang hydroxide. Compounds containing hydroxides are insoluble. Ang exception, compounds of the alkali metal cations and calcium, strontium, and barium. Napasok ba sa exception yung nickel? Hindi. So, anong masasabi mo sa nickel hydroxide? Is it going to be a precipitate? Next reaction in your chart. Potassium iodide and lead nitrate. Again, examine the product. Meron ba dito ang insoluble? So if there is an insoluble product, you will form a precipitate. So titingnan mo dito sa chart. In the same manner, o parang merong kamukhang reaction earlier sa aking example. Sodium carbonate and calcium chloride. When sodium reacts with chloride, you will form sodium chloride. When calcium reacts with carbonate, you will form calcium carbonate. Meron bang insoluble product dyan? What about potassium acetate and silver nitrate to form silver acetate and potassium nitrate? Okay, meron bang insoluble product dyan according to this chart?